Welcome back to Sunday Night in America. NATO has been around since most of us have been around. This alliance was forged in the aftermath of World War II. Agreements were made by countries of good conscience to defend one another from what was then called an axis of evil. Three malevolent forces joined together to disrupt the world order. The countries may change over the course of history, but the battle remains. It's good versus evil, freedom versus tyranny, a world led by the United States or a world led by others. Under Article 5 of the treaty, should a member nation be attacked, other members will help. It's been invoked once by us after 9/11, and member nations did what they said they would do. They came to our defense. NATO is larger now. Russia's invasion of Ukraine, no doubt, played a role in Sweden and Finland deciding to join, but Ukraine is not a member. Ukraine wants to be a member, but is not. Ukraine is, however, a buffer between Russia and other NATO countries, which means Ukraine may well be a buffer between our soldiers fighting Russian soldiers in Eastern Europe. It is true the U.S. is not treaty-bound to defend Ukraine, but there is a belief that helping Ukraine defend itself now actually keeps the U.S. out of a broader war. And then, of course, there's the old-fashioned notion that it's just the right thing to do to help a smaller nation defend itself against an unprovoked attack from a bully. Congress recently passed an aid package which included money for Ukraine. Like everything else these days, it was controversial. Ukraine may lose this war even with the help. Ukraine will most assuredly lose the war without it. Did the help come too late? Joining us now is Mircea Geoana, the Deputy Secretary General of NATO. Welcome, sir. Thank you for joining us. Give us your take on the war in Eastern Europe and whether the aid for Ukraine came too late.
I was in Washington, D.C. In the Senate when the legislation was passed. And of course, the delay in adopting such important legislation created some impact on the battlefield, but we believe this is not decisive. We believe that with the help of all allies and partners of Ukraine in NATO and outside of NATO, the U.S. support is roughly 50% of the aggregate support coming from other allies in supporting Ukraine. And as we were a little bit probably over-optimistic a few months back at the beginning of the Ukrainian counteroffensive, we should also avoid to be over-pessimistic at this point in time. It's a more delicate time on the battlefield, but we know that with our help and with the resilience and bravery of Ukrainians, they will be able to withstand and in the end prevail in this war, because their war is also our war. As you rightly said, in fact, they're fighting our fight against a bully, against an aggressor. And also, let's not forget that others, like China, are watching how things are developing in Ukraine. And they're actively watching and drawing lessons from what we do or we don't do. But I'm confident that Ukraine will prevail, and I think that our support is well-deserved for this brave nation in Europe, and also an example to the rest of the world.
You mentioned something that I think necessitates a follow-up. Americans hear a lot about member contributions to the common cause of NATO. So are other NATO countries stepping up? You mentioned the statistic 50%, but I'll just ask you, are they stepping up for the common defense under NATO? And more specifically with respect to Ukraine, there's this notion that it's the U.S. doing it alone, but when I hear you speak, it's actually exactly as it was intended. Other countries are helping too.
Yes, they do. And probably we should do a better job ourselves communicating better to the U.S. Congress, to the American public opinion, to American international media. All nations in NATO do support Ukraine. I give you an example of Iceland. They don't have an army, and they still are putting at the disposal of transportation, airport, and this is something that happens from small and big allies in NATO. And let's not forget there are close to 50 nations, not only the US, not only NATO, other nations are also supporting Ukraine from the Indo-Pacific. The nations that are really believing in democracy and the fight of Ukraine is just. And when we add up not only military support, but there is also a lot of macroeconomic and financial support to Ukraine. That's also money. We also speak about humanitarian assistance for Ukraine. There are lots of refugees, there are lots of people with kids that European nations are taking care of. This is also costing money. So if you put on aggregate, I think that America plays a big role, but is far from being alone. Each of us are doing our part. Each of us do understand that it's a common struggle for freedom, for democracy, and for norms in this very convoluted world we are living in.
Before I let you go, let's end on a happier note. There's an arms race, but there's also a technology race. What is NATO doing, and how is NATO doing in the competition to attract and retain the best and brightest minds as it relates to technology?
Listen, I chair innovation in NATO, and we are just harnessing the immense innovation ecosystem across our great alliance and also our partners. You see the science behind me. I'm now at Purdue University, one of the leading engineering universities. Yesterday, I was at MIT in Boston. We have 140 different places around the alliance working on innovation for our security and for our freedom. NATO is also the first organization in the world that was putting together, we are now operating a NATO Innovation Fund, the first multinational sovereign venture capital fund. In NATO, 32 nations, now with Sweden, the latest and the newest comer into NATO, we are more than 50% of global GDP in NATO. We are more than 50% of global defense spending in NATO. We are a formidable force. So this is why NATO is so important. 75 years since our founding fathers, God bless their souls, they really had the brilliant idea to create NATO. We are now heading for the Washington Summit in July, and we are ready to continue to do what we are meant to be doing, protecting freedom, 1 billion people, and this is the sacred mission of our great alliance.
Thank you for your service to NATO and to the United States.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.